Hi, everybody. This is Alan Ellman, the Blue Collar Investor, and welcome to this Beginner's Corner Information Series, second edition. Today, we're going to go through Lesson 3, Stock Selection Using Fundamental and Technical Analysis. In the first two lessons, we went through option basics and defined covered call writing. In today's lesson, we're going to decide on a process to determine the underlying stocks we're going to use for this strategy. Now, for covered call writing, there are three required skills we must master before risking even 1 penny of our hard-earned money. The first one is what we're addressing in Lesson 3 here, is stock or exchange-traded fund selection. The second is option selection, and the third is position management or exit strategies. Now, for stock selection, we have a three-pronged process in determining which stocks we're going to use for our short-term option selling. Fundamental analysis, which we'll define in just a moment, technical analysis, reading a price chart, and common sense principles, which is what we're going to address in Lesson 4. So in Lesson 3, we're going to go through fundamental analysis and technical analysis as we use it in the BCI methodology. So let's define what fundamental analysis is. It's evaluating the financial health of a company by looking at earnings, sales, and assets. We get this through the earnings reports, which are published quarterly. Now, there are some online screening services that are available to determine the fundamental health of a company. Some of them are free, and some of them are paid subscriptions. So I'm going to go through those for you in the next slide, but first let me tell you why I feel fundamental analysis is so important as the first step in our stock screening. The institutional investors, I'm talking now about mutual funds, hedge funds, banks, insurance companies, they put a lot of emphasis on fundamentals. And so they make their selections based on companies that are financially sound. And that's the reason why I feel this should be the first step in our stock screening for short-term option selling. So using the BCI methodology, these are the screens that I use. First, I look at the Investors Business Daily 50. Now, this is in addition to the database that we have developed over the years of more than 3,000 stocks that we've identified as potential option selling candidates. And we screen that database of more than 3,000 stocks, along with the IBD 50 every week for our members. Now, the IBD 50 basically are growth companies that have great price charts. So over the years, I've had a lot of success selecting from this list. I also use a second Investors Business Daily screen known as the Smart Select. And this is a screen that looks at the fundamentals and technicals, not only of the stock, but also the industry that that stock is located in. So that's why I feel it's a great analysis. I'll show you that in just a moment. Recently, we've also added two institutional components to our screening process. On-balance volume, where the volume on up days is added and the volume on down days is subtracted. That creates a line, and we'd like to have an uptrending line just to confirm the bullish sentiment of a stock. We've also added the mean analyst rating, which is a consensus of analysts that follow a particular company. So the analysts speak to people within the company, they look at the financial statements, and then they make an analysis whether they're bullish or bearish on the stock. And the consensus results in the mean analyst rating, or MAR. Now, for those who don't want to pay for any screening services at all, there is the free screener found at finviz.com, which I'll show you in just a moment. So here is a screenshot taken from Investors Business Daily, and I highlighted in the brown field how they define the IBD 50, top 50 stocks. As I said, mainly growth companies, but they define them as companies with strong relative price strength. So the charts are looking up, and top-notch fundamentals. And once again, if the institutional investors like these stocks, then we should as well. Here's a look at the Smart Select screen. And by the way, IBD is a paid service. It's a very good one. But if you're a member of the Blue Collar Investor, you won't need it because we'll do the screening for you. Now, the IBD Smart Select gives you fundamental and technical screening for the stock and the industry the stock is in. And if you look at that middle column over there, which says rating, that column over there, you could see there's some numbers here and some letters here. But what I do is I just look at the checklist. And the checklist has circles. The circles can be green, yellow, or red. Green is the highest ranked in that particular category. Yellow is in the middle, and red is poor performers. So when we do screening for the BCI methodology, we require 6 green circles. You could see how rigorous the screening is for a stock to make the BCI watch list. Here's a look at the on-balance volume. Remember I told you that we add volume on up days and subtract volume on down days. So the OBV over here, if we see a line that's uptrending, it normally will coincide with an uptrending price of the stock. So it's kind of a bullish confirmation when the OBV is uptrending. The second institutional component that we use is the mean analyst rating. And the mean analyst rating takes the consensus of all the analysts following a stock. You know, some analysts rate a stock a strong buy all the way down to a sell. So on the June ratings, we see that there are 14 analysts, and it came out to a ranking of 2.4. 1 is the best, 5 is the worst. In the BCI methodology, we require a mean analyst rating of 3 or lower. Otherwise, it won't make our screen. And finally, let me show you the FinViz screener. If you go to www.finviz.com, there's a free screener. You could see all the drop downs over here, the drop down for market cap. And there are technical and fundamental drop downs. You can put in the information and it will generate a list of stocks that meet all of those parameters. So once again, if you want a completely free screening service, you should give finviz.com some consideration. I still feel that the BCI premium member screens are the best, but again, I want to offer you a free way of getting these stocks as well. Now, that was the fundamental approach. Let's have a look at technical analysis. So what exactly is technical analysis? Well, it's a method of predicting future stock price based on historical price movements. So those of you who have looked at price charts, you see various lines going up, going down. Sometimes there are bars on, and if you haven't studied technical analysis, it can be quite intimidating. But in reality, if you could tell if a line is going up or down, or if it's above or below zero, you pretty much could read a price chart. And we use this to determine trend, in other words, what's happened in the past, and momentum. Is it a positive bullish momentum, or is it a negative bearish momentum? And there are many free sites that will give you these price charts. And the one we use in the BCI methodology for our members, we use stockcharts.com. Now, many of you have never read a price chart and not familiar with technical analysis. So these terms that I'm about to give you can be a bit intimidating. But once again, I just want to reassure you that if you could tell if a line is going up or down, or if it's above or below zero, pretty much can read a price chart. Now, there are a lot of technical parameters, and the ones that I use, I'm happy to share with you. And I've used them very successfully now for over 2 decades as it relates to short-term option selling. But feel free to use the ones you're most comfortable with. as long as they include trend, momentum, and volume confirmation. So we use exponential moving averages to identify trend. The MACD histogram, I'm going to show you these in just a moment, to identify both trend and momentum. The stochastic oscillator, which is a momentum indicator, and we use volume to confirm and also to identify negative divergence. So those are the ones that I've been using very, very successfully over the last 2 decades as it relates to covered call writing. So here's an example of a price chart with bullish technicals. Let's start with the exponential moving averages on the top. And we use a 20-day and a 100-day. So the 20-day is this blue line, and the 100-day, the longer term, is this red line. And we'd like to see the blue line, the more recent prices, higher than the red line. And we'd like to see the price bars at or above the 20-day exponential moving average, which you can see on the right side of the chart is the case. Now, the MACD histogram, which I told you was trend and momentum indicator, are these blue bars over here. And what it does is it deducts a longer term moving average from a shorter term moving average, and then deducts its exponential moving average from that. So there's a whole lot of math involved. Don't worry about it. What you need to know right now is we want those blue bars to be uptrending, which you could see they are on the right side of the chart, and above the 0 line over here, which you could see they are. So we have a bullish MACD histogram. Now, the stochastic oscillator, which is right here by this green arrow, we also like to see uptrending. And so we have a bullish stochastic oscillator, and all that is confirmed with some fairly significant volume, which are the bars on the bottom. Now, one other thing about volume. When you have an uptrending chart like you have here on the top, and you have volume, which in this case it's not, but had the volume been downtrending like that, that's called negative volume divergence and is a red flag that the pricing may start to change. So that's another thing we look at when we read a price chart. In this particular case, we don't have that. We have a very bullish chart. So for those of you who are premium members and we provide the analysis for you, all of the cells here in the blue bars on the top represent fundamental and technical as well as common sense screening. We'll get to the common sense in lesson 4. But you could see here the chart price. You could see mean analyst rating, the fundamental smart select ratings over here. We identify industry. And there's a lot of other information that we provide to our members as well. So once again, it's a 3-pronged approach to stock screening: fundamental analysis, technical analysis, and common sense principles. We also provide to our members a list of the stocks that made our screen during the current contract month. We start with the last week of the previous contract, and then we go into the first week, second week, third week, and fourth week, and so on of the current contract month. So, for example, a stock like Alibaba over here was on the first month. When it's in bold, it means it had all bullish technicals. Then it was still on the list, but the technicals started to turn a bit. Didn't make it this week here, but it came back again on this last week here. So you can kind of get a feel for the movement of the stock during the course of the current contract. Okay, so let's summarize stock selection based on fundamental and technical analysis. And by the way, let me just remind everybody that the Beginner's Corner is an overview. It doesn't get into the details like our books and DVD programs do. It's an overview. It's kind of like the Cliff Notes we used to use in college, which gave an overview of a book, but not the details. So when I say we're going to summarize fundamental and technical analysis, it's summarizing the general overview that we use in the BCI methodology. Now, fundamental analysis, we look at earnings growth and sales growth. We love to look at these statistics because that's what the institutional investors look at. And we look at technical analysis. I mentioned the 4 parameters used in the BCI methodology. where we identify trend and momentum. So that concludes Beginner's Corner Information Lesson 3, Stock Selection Using Fundamental and Technical Analysis. When you come back to Lesson 4, we're going to continue and finish up with stock selection using common sense principles. As always, this is Alan Ellman, the Blue Collar Investor. Take care, everybody.